I'm almost 50, strong, clear, energized. Training hard, living clean, fully alive. But it didn't start here. 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I felt hopeless. But I chose a different path. No meds, just science, discipline, and results. Now I'm symptom-free and asking the tough questions that move us all forward. This is Hope and Health. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Hope and Health. I'm Mathew Embry, and today we have an exciting interview with representatives from Quantum BioPharma, a company developing Lucid MS, a drug that will hopefully help people with multiple sclerosis by helping them regrow myelin. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to start this by personally thanking you for the work that you are doing. For me, I've been in the MS community for more than 30 years, and regrowing myelin and helping people with disability has been paramount for all of us. And the work you are doing is inspiring and very helpful and hopeful to our community. So first, can you introduce yourselves and let us know your role at the company?
I can jump in first. My name's Andrzej Kruszyński. I'm the VP of Clinical Affairs at Quantum BioPharma. I have a MD PhD degree from Stanford and clinical training in cardiology and transplant. I've also run a lab focusing on immune tolerance and transplant. And at Quantum BioPharma, I've been involved with the clinical development of Lucid MS with just finishing up phase 1 clinical trials.
Fantastic.
And I'm Anthony Durkaz. I am the co-founder and co-executive chairman of Quantum BioPharma.
Fantastic. So let's jump into this. Let's talk about what is Lucid MS for someone who knows nothing about what you're trying to develop.
I'm very excited to be part of this therapy. I think what's really interesting is that it's a Canadian story, or largely a Canadian story. And there's really two parts to it. The first part involves an investigator from Toronto named Mario Mascarello, who in the mid-1990s discovered that myelin in people with MS is biochemically altered and that it can be unstable, meaning that the myelin sheath can unravel. I don't want to get too technical, but this biochemical alteration is something called citrullination, and it's a change that causes a change in charge of myelin proteins. And because the myelin sheath is very dependent on positive and negative charges to keep it very compact and tight, if you change the charge, that can cause the myelin sheath to unravel. So citrullination is the key word. And in healthy people and normal brains, there's a certain level of citrullination. But what Dr. Mascarello found is that there's hypercitrullination in people with MS. So there's significantly more. What's important about the citrullination in MS is that it can not only destabilize myelin, but it can also activate the immune system, because this myelin that's altered looks foreign to the immune system. So perhaps it looks like a virus, and then it's activates an immune response.
Now, before you keep going, was this altered myelin, are people born with the altered myelin, or is there an environmental trigger that changes the myelin? Where do you think there?
That's a good question. And that's kind of like, what causes multiple sclerosis? But we really don't know what would trigger this change and this hypercitrullination. But it does appear to be going on probably before people develop symptoms in multiple sclerosis. The other key thing to know is that this hypercitrullination is mediated by enzymes called PADs, and there's several subtypes of these PADs that have been identified. So that's kind of work that Mario Mascarello did. And then the next part of the story involves Dr. Lakshmi Kotra, who's on the board at Quantum BioPharma. And so Dr. Kotra started this collaboration with Dr. Mascarello. So he learned about these PAD enzymes and citrullination. And Dr. Kocher then set out to develop a suitable PAD inhibitor that could be used to treat hypercitrullination in MS. And that really led to the development of, or discovery of Lucid MS, as we call it now.
So before we get into that discovery, how would that process work? So what exactly were you looking to do?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, these this hypercitrullination is mediated by these PAD enzymes, and there's several subtypes. There's one subtype that's more localized to the brain. So Dr. Kotra focused on that subtype and was generating basically an inhibitor of it. So it involved a lot of protein modeling, and then really an iterative process where you'd go through a library of molecules, find one that looks suitable, try it out in the lab and see if it has favorable characteristics, and then maybe modify that. So it was definitely a multi-year process to develop this molecule.
So if I'm thinking how this would stop the disease process, in theory, what you're trying to do is change the myelin so the immune system doesn't attack it?
Exactly. So preventing this unraveling so that just because this unraveling itself can activate immune responses.
Okay, so what was the strategy to stop the unraveling, and what did you do?
So the strategy was to prevent hypercitrullination, and that was related to Dr. Kotra's screening for drugs that would have efficacy at inhibiting PAD enzymes. And again, that led to the development of Lucid MS. And I really like to think of Lucid MS as a myelin protective agent. So it keeps myelin compact and prevents it from unraveling.
Okay, so you've got this idea. Let's get into, I mean, we're going to have lots of business questions coming up down the interview. You're at the genesis of this. You've got this theory. How did you get this company going in the first place before you got to where you are today?
I can say that Dr. Kotra started a company first called Lucid Psychoceuticals, and began work on, taking this drug basically from, the bedside to the clinic. Lucid Psychoceuticals was eventually acquired by Quantum BioPharma. So it was kind of a long process. I don't know, Anthony, if you have any comments more about the acquisition of Lucid.
The reason why we acquired it is I was in the lab in the Mars Center visiting Dr. Kotra, and he showed me the videos of mice that couldn't walk. And then after being given dosage of Lucid MS, over a fairly short period of time, were able to walk again. And so personally, that blew me away. I was, incredibly impressed. And because I have two neighbors that have MS, I have seen over the years how it impacts them. And so it really hit home that, this was very interesting. And when we did our diligence, there was nothing else that we could find like it at the time. And Dr. Kotra, and the University Health Network had gotten this molecule to a certain stage. And then they look for partners, to fund clinical trials. And that's where we came in.
So you came in, just so we're super clear, you came in to fund the first clinical trial with Lucid MS. Was that for people, or was still with the mice model?
For people. Ultimately, our intention is to test this on human beings. It is a new chemical entity. So this is a chemical that had never entered the human body before we started these phase 1 safety trials.
So Lucid MS is developed to help people with multiple sclerosis. It does that by changing the myelin, I guess, to make it more stable. Would that be the idea, that it can't be attacked?
Yeah, again, I think of it as this myelin protective agent. So so a totally new class of medication. It doesn't inhibit immune responses like almost all the other drugs for MS that are out there. like directly, immunosuppressive.
That is a very important point to make. This is not an immunosuppressant drug. It protects the myelin sheath is the idea. You tried this. I've seen the videos. I saw them a while ago, actually, with the mice, and it's unbelievable when you see it. The recovery that these mice have in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. I can also, what we think is happening there is that, there's a balance of damage and repair going on. And then in the mice that have multiple sclerosis or a model of multiple sclerosis, there's so much damage that the repair system can't keep up with that. But with our drug, we can stabilize the myelin, prevent the damage, and then the repair system can kick in. And that's why you see functional recovery in the animals. There's two main models of multiple sclerosis that we used in mice. One is a traditional one called EAE. So that's experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. In that case, you inject mice with myelin proteins and an immune stimulator. And what we found is that, the mice become sick and develop a paralysis. But when you give mice our drug, you can reverse this paralysis. So they actually are able to walk again. So that's this EAE model. There's also a second model that was developed. There's another Canadian connection by Dr. Peter Stice, who's a neurologist in Calgary. It's a little bit of a different model where you damage myelin with a compound called cuprizome, and then you stimulate immune responses. And in this second model called CAE, we also found protection from our drug. And our drug just had to be given when you damage the myelin with cuprizome. If you can block the damage, then you block the immune response that occurs. So it was effective in two different models of multiple sclerosis.
Now, were you shocked by this? Was this a surprise to you?
Well, just, based on the proposed mechanism of action, this is, something that we expected, but, you're always, I think, surprised to see how well it worked.
Okay, so I've seen the video, and hopefully our audience will see the video as well. It is really impressive, gentlemen. And Anthony, I can understand when you saw it, you jumped at the opportunity. So what happened next?
Okay, well, what happened once we saw the videos is we ended up acquiring Lucid and the team, and then they became part of Quantum BioPharma.
At that stage, and I know the jump to get from the mice model to human beings is a big one. Can you kind of walk me and the audience through how you navigated that and what challenges you faced? And let's just get to like where we're at today. What's happened?
I mean, the biggest challenge is always money, right? Like, so money's always the biggest challenge. So in our case, because Quantum BioPharma is a public company that trades on the NASDAQ and the Canadian Securities Exchange, we have had access to financing and capital, which was extremely important for Dr. Kotra and the team to continue the work and to continue to progress this to clinical studies.
Okay, so getting the money together, that's but you did it. You were able to raise the money and get things going for your first phase. Can you explain to me what happened there and what occurred?
Yeah, well, I could say even before giving this to people, there's major work that needs to go on in terms of synthesizing the drug to very exacting specifications to make GMP drug products. So that's good manufacturing practice drug product. You also have to turn it into a actual drug. So not just pure drug, but it has to become a tablet or a capsule. We also have to do, before this could be given to people, toxicity studies. These are typically in rats and another non-rat species. So you have to show it giving massive doses to animals that it's safe and well tolerated. So once you kind of pass those, there's also a variety of other kind of assays that the FDA and Health Canada require. Once you finish those, you move on to something called phase 1 clinical trials. So these are trials in healthy participants. And it tells you about, is the drug safe and well tolerated? You also get ideas of the blood levels you're getting in people, and that helps you decide like what would be an effective dose in a larger trial in multiple sclerosis. So I'd say, lots of work. Getting up to this point's been about 3 years, I would say, or 3.5 years.
And that's really great for our audience to know. And a lot of people don't understand this. From once we see the amazing results with the mice, how many phases do you need to go through before it can get to the patient population?
It's just after phase 1 is a phase 2 trial, and that's usually a smaller trial but that's in patients with MS. But that would be an efficacy trial. So we would be looking for a signal, either by people getting better with the drug or stopping a rate of decline, stopping progression. We'd also look by MRI to see if there's changes in myelin that would suggest our drug is stabilizing myelin, as we saw in the animal studies. So phase 1 in healthy controls, and then phase 2, you can begin studies if the FDA and Health Canada will let you to do efficacy studies in people with multiple sclerosis.
So when you saw the results in the mice, what was your timeline in your mind to get it to people to start seeing if it was going to work?
Yeah, I knew it was
it's almost an impossible. Yeah, there's so many factors and moving parts that change. What we know now is that our the hope and intent is that we'll be able to engage in these phase 2 trials to look for the signals from patients with MS in 2026. So next year.
So let's go through phase 1. Can we talk about phase 1? How you got there, where it's at?
Yeah. So I can tell you there's 2 parts for the phase 1. So there's something called a single ascending dose study. So this is where the drug is just given at 1 dose to people. And then again, that's healthy people. And then if that's looks encouraging, then you move on to a multiple ascending dose or MAD study. Each of these studies has about 30 to 40 people in them. And typically what you're doing is looking at different doses of your drug, looking to see if it's tolerated by people, getting laboratory tests to show that you're not having evidence of kidney or liver damage. The other important thing is that you do take blood at certain time points, very defined time points in these participants, to understand what kind of levels of the drug that you're achieving, and is it well absorbed, for example, if taken orally. I would say we were very happy with the levels that we saw of our drug, of Lucid MS, and it was also very well tolerated in people either given as a single dose or given after multiple days.
So for people who don't know, what phase did you get to and what happened during that? As for someone who has no idea about this story.
Yeah, the phase 1 was in healthy participants, and so we've basically now completed those. And again, those are studies just in healthy people showing safety of the drug. You can't really address the efficacy at all in healthy people. But now we're getting close to starting the phase 2 study in people with MS, as Anthony was saying, in 2026, so next year.
And then once you have phase 2 results, if the results are positive, then you would go to what's called phase 3, which is a larger scale, with a larger population and more variables. And phase 3 is the final phase. And if that gets approved, then you will be able to put the drug into market and make it available for MS patients.
Now we're going to get into some drama here that I know the two of you have been going through. It's also been in the national news. But before we do, I want you to know that Lucid MS has been discussed in MS circles for some time now. We've been keeping an eye. You're chasing the Holy Grail. I mean, if you can achieve what you achieved in mice with people, this will be unbelievable game changer for MS patients all over the world. It comes up in our discussions. I've been on your website. I was going to contact you independently, but then suddenly I see a really big story in the news was sent to me on stock spoofing. Can you please define what this is and the ramifications it had on your company?
Yes. So as we continued our journey to try to make progress with this life-changing and game-changing drug candidate, Lucid MS, we would deliver what was positive news and making positive progress, and our stock continued to go down fairly dramatically. And we ended up discovering that with experts and lawyers that there was something wrong. And the data and evidence that we were able to obtain showed that our stock, which trades both in Canada and the United States, and the volumes in the United States are like many multiples higher than in Canada. Any stock has a bid and an ask. So the bid is a buyer and the ask is a seller. And you can have many different ones at many different times at many different prices. But if I was looking to show a very, very big intent to buy or a very big intent to sell, we're talking like very big, like much bigger than normal, much bigger than, say, typically what you would see in the volumes of a stock on a daily basis over a period of time. So these are significant and large, but they're shown and they're put in place with the intent not to actually act on them. The intent is to manipulate the price. So as you can imagine, if you see very big sell orders, many, and very large sell orders in our stock, most individuals start to think, wow, is there someone who knows something and this is a very large sell order? You know, is there something wrong? And that intent is a spoof, and a spoof is a stock manipulation tactic, which is illegal in Canada and the United States today.
Okay, so I'm very clear. So it's you've got you trade both in Canada and the US. You're releasing positive data, but you're watching your stock price go down, which it should be the other way. And you're also watching massive bids. And so a bid is someone with an intent.
Not in our case, asks. And the asks are with the intent for the share price itself to go down.
Okay. And so what size of asks?
If on our website, if you go to quantumbioPharma.com and you go to the tab Quantum versus Big Banks, you can obtain all of our filings. And in those filings, you can obtain the evidence that we have presented to the court. And that evidence has data and numbers.
Understood. And I'm sure you can't get into too many details. I mean, I'm aware this is an ongoing case. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, $700 million is what the lawsuit is for?
Correct. US dollars. So almost $1 billion Canadian.
So almost $1 billion lawsuit. And so just so I know, and the MS community knows, because of this, what happened to your company during that time?
It delayed our progress. It created a lot of different challenges, some of them monumental. It prevented us from raising, as much money as we were targeting. And at the same time, the majority of our shareholders, which are individuals like you and I, they're not institutions that hold our shares. They're individual people, and they were losing large amounts or sometimes up to almost the majority of their investment. And these are good people supporting a very good and noble cause. And we allege now in court, because we had no other options to do anything other than just allow it to happen and say nothing. But this was a wrong, and this was a wrong to many, many thousands of individual shareholders who were good people that believed in the company, that wanted to help support us, and illegal activity where other small handfuls of funds were making money from the losses of mom and pop investors across Canada, the United States, and Europe.
Well, I mean, from an outside, this is a horror show. And from someone who's got multiple sclerosis, there is a grave injustice that potentially has been done here. And I'm just going to walk the story through as simple as I can for our audience, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So more or less, there is a scientific discovery that the way that myelin operates with people with MS is different. There is a strategy that goes into place to be able to help that and help the disease and the people. A company is formed around that. That, Anthony, you see these results. A legitimate corporation acquires that company, correct? And wants to push forward this research into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials to get this to MS patients. Once you start sharing with the public that you're having positive results in your phase 1, your company goes under attack.
The stock was under attack before that, but the stock was continuously going down. And part of the reason that we have alleged in court is because of a stock market manipulation tactic used called spoofing.
So from a person with MS's perspective, the ability for your company to get your drug to market successfully for patients was interfered with through financial markets
and illegal activity. I would have no issue if market manipulation was legal or spoofing was legal, but it's not. It's illegal, both in Canada and the United States. So those who use those tactics to make money, while in our case stifling the progress of what could be a life-changing positive drug for millions of people today. And this may not end at MS, right? It could be more than that. That's a crime. And
I agree.
There is a group of people and traders that made money from the stock going down. They profited from that. There are thousands of individual good mom and pop shareholders that lost a lot of money. And it's never a zero-sum game. Where there's a gain because the stock went down means that somebody lost, right? So in this case, there are thousands of people impacted, and there are millions of people today with this disease impacted by the stifling of our progress due to illegal stock manipulation. It was almost like they literally tried to destroy us, tried to destroy our work before we're even getting to the most exciting part of it, the human efficacy signal. And like we can't sit idle. And look, we need people to understand this. We need people to think about this. We need people to hopefully even take action and not sit idle when there is a massive injustice happening that's illegal. And unfortunately, to this day, there's never been, to our knowledge, a case where there was a spoofing incident in a stock and anybody went to jail.
Do you know why specifically your company?
Unfortunately, we're not the only company that are targeted. There are many cases of this. We know many other CEOs of small and microcap entrepreneurial companies, both in Canada and the USA, that have been subjected to this type of stock manipulation and these tactics, right? And this impacts the foundation of entrepreneurship in this country and in the United States today. And it's a problem. And specifically in our case, we have been able to fight. We have been able to put together the resources that most of these other small entrepreneurial companies, they just don't have the means and the resources. Once their stock is destroyed and they can't raise any more money, they have no fight in them to try to fight an injustice that was done to them in the past. It's just they don't have the resources, right, and the money to do it. In our case, we were extremely fortunate and very hardworking, and we don't have any. We have a management team that has a lot of fight in us, and when you're fighting for the right cause and for true justice, and because this is a problem that could be so much bigger, and it is so much bigger, we feel that we are truly trying to do the right thing on different levels. We're trying to do the right thing, bringing Lucid MS to, patients, and we are doing the right thing by making public what is happening not only to us, but to other companies like us, where there are good people, good management, great science, and it's being stifled by illegal stock manipulation acts.
And again, I want to say thank you again, and hats off to you and your team. I mean, I think this kind of story for me is incredibly inspiring, and I know our MS community is behind you. The fact that you were able to survive it through a company and that you still have this drive to not only help people with MS with the drug, but to also push back against this type of illegal financial market activity. I mean, we as Canadians, people around the world, we need to know this is going on. So you did survive, which is incredibly important. So I know you've got a huge lawsuit ahead of you with $700 million US potentially on the table. Where are things today?
Today, our intention is to see to phase 2, to see if we can get that efficacy signal for the first time in history in a human being. It's like the most exciting part. It's like all our milestones that we've been working at for years, and Dr. Kotra's been working at for decades, right? Like, this is it. This is where we need to go. And, God willing, if you believe in God or the universe or water or oxygen or whatever we believe in, right? Ourselves, right? There's wouldn't be anything that would make us happier, I think, in our careers, than to get that efficacy signal. And we are going to we're gonna put it to trial next year, and you will all know the results as soon as we get them.
And we are keeping a close eye on that. Now, I know you don't have a crystal ball and you can't predict too much, but what do you expect to see in phase 2?
It's impossible to know. What we hope, like that every other MS patient in the world today hopes, is that it works, right? We everything about the design of it and all the inputs and the years of studies and research, we're giving it the best opportunity for it to work from a science basis. But we're dealing with life, so there's always ups and downs for everything and everyone. We just really hope and believe, and we hope that everybody stays positive, because positive thoughts can manifest, and this would be something that would just be so positive for millions of people today suffering from MS.
Are you able to describe more of the science of phase 2 and what that's going to look like?
Well, I would say we're still in the process of designing the trial, but it would be a placebo-controlled study, basically half people on our drug and half on placebo. And then we'd be looking at a whole variety of clinical indicators to see, not only are people, stabilized and progression is prevented, but is there actually an improvement in function like we saw in the animal models? There'd also be a significant imaging component to it. So by MRI, looking for stabilization of the myelin. There's a variety of advanced MRI techniques that can be used to really interrogate the integrity of myelin. But that's typical kind of phase 2 design with a placebo control.
And that technology is where we're working with the Massachusetts General Hospital and the team from Harvard, correct? On that.
Yeah, we do have a collaboration with a group at Harvard looking at different ways to image myelin. So we want to make sure we're on the cutting edge of imaging techniques and include those into our phase 2 study.
Now, let's talk timeline. I know when I go back to the MS community and this starts to get out there on our social media channels and our discussions, let's just say if things are successful, if we start seeing something really dramatic, which I think we're all rooting for, I know we're all rooting for you, and we want to see this as a community, what kind of timeline to get this to people?
It's still, it's impossible for us to say, also because we're a public company, we can't make claims, right? Like from that perspective, it'll be as fast as possible, right? Like you can be assured it's going to be as fast as possible. What it would help us though is like people also supporting our cause and trying to join, our group and our army to make sure that people are asking questions and putting up stinks, because the more that we're prevented from raising money or that we're being manipulated makes these timelines longer. And that's a fact.
And, you said it earlier in the interview, what can the average person do? I mean, we've got a huge reach. Like what someone watching this, like what can we do?
Call their banks, call their brokers, ask about this type of stuff. Ask what's being done. Ask your local politicians to ask, your ministers of finance. Keep the pressure and the discussion on that. Just because, mom and pops lose money, that doesn't make it a victimless crime. It's not like someone held a knife to someone or a gun to their head, but they still lost money from an illegal activity. That's bad. And they were still harmed. And then people around them harmed. And then the progress of, this drug candidate for MS patients was harmed. There's been a lot of harm that gets done.
Now, are you finding other companies reaching out to you who have experienced similar things?
Unbelievable amounts of companies and CEOs are reaching out. This is hopefully the beginning of something much, much bigger, of a justice or a movement to justice.
And I really hope that our podcast can help get the word out, because in this case, I mean, the level of injustice is dramatic, not only from a financial point of view, but actually holding back potential therapy for people who are suffering.
And it almost destroyed us. It was terrible, and it has destroyed a number of our shareholders to date. And we have interviews on our website of real shareholders with real losses and their experiences. And we tell people, go see it yourself, so you can feel the pain and the suffering that has come out of this.
And sorry, what website can people go to learn more information about this?
www.quantumbioPharma.com.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I want to end this interview by saying thank you. The work you're doing is phenomenal. I know people around the world are keeping an eye on your company, and hopefully this story creates more awareness. And I wish you the absolute best. I hope things go fantastic for you. And I am excited about phase 2 and phase 3. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Hope and Health is made possible through generous donations. To learn more or support the show, visit mshope.com, where you'll find free science-based resources.